guys. Well, again, thanks a lot for coming. I'm not certain if any of you use plants in your home situations, but they really are so beneficial. They, in addition to adding beauty, I mean, they can truly set the tone of a room. Good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh,
Come on in.
thanks.
That's a very silly shirt.
Oh, very silly. That's what it's supposed to be.
It serves its purpose.
What's so funny about it?
It's the duck. It's the rubber duck. Oh gosh. Well, thanks for coming. Did y'all have trouble getting down Broadway?
Sure did. Well,
yes.
I live on North New Brunswick,
Uh-huh.
and they got that all under construction.
Yes.
You can't get through. I thought you was going to take me 5 minutes.
Right.
To roll around.
Yes, and there was no
Are
warning.
they ever going to finish construction?
No, no. We've all decided. It's all going to be that way. Well,
Tell him to fix it.
tell who to fix what?
Hardburger. It's his doing that we have all of our streets.
Well, there we go. He'll say he came into it and it was already in place. We all have excuses.
That's all right.
Well, as I was just starting, houseplants can lend so much to a home. I mean, they really can change the way a room looks. They can be very dramatic. They can soften hard areas in a room or an office. I mean, they really should be used in office situations as well, because so many offices are closed up. There's absolutely no fresh air getting in there. And there are so many toxins emitted into the air by things like carpeting and paint and wood, stains and sealants. It just really is amazing. There's formaldehyde floating around in the air of our living spaces, benzene, and so many other things. NASA has actually done a lot of research, a lot of which is outlined in this book called How to Grow Fresh Air, saying how much different plants will remove from the air. There's a fabulous list of plants in here, including the removal of chemical vapors, ease of growth, resistance to infestation by insects, and transpiration rate, the amount of moisture put back into the air. And this book is a wonderful book. I bought this book based on one sentence in here, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But there has been very, very much research done on growing plants and the benefits that they cause, or they can bring to us. And in fact, I mean, they really will enhance mood as well. Because I say, if you come into a room and everything is really stark, you know, it gives you one feeling. At the end of the day, if you were to walk into a room like that, it may be a little harder to relax. But if you come into a room that has some plants softening it, it just somehow just seems to make things a little bit easier. So no matter how much light you have in a room, you can grow a plant, believe it or not. If you have areas that are really, really dark, we do recommend perhaps taking 2 low light plants and switching them. This right over here is a pretty good selection of some of the more typical low light plants. These are called Neanthobella palms, Sansevierias, Pothos ivy. This is a marble queen. I'm sure you've all seen the one with the yellow on the foliage. This is just one that has the cream color on it, which I kind of prefer, I guess because I've seen the other one for so many years. Also, of course, everyone knows peace lily or spathiphyllum. This is a maranta, which actually can be grown under low or moderate light. This is one of my favorite houseplants because it's beautiful to look at. It's very easy to care for. If you need just kind of a smaller trailing plant in an area, something like this would work really well. One interesting fact about these, it's called a prayer plant because at the end of the day, excuse me, a prayer plant, yeah, at the end of the day, because the leaves fold like this. So often you'll come home from work and you'll see your plant like that and you'll think something's wrong with it, but now that you know, that is just one of the features of this particular maranta. So, sir?
Their low-life plants, does too much light hurt them?
It certainly can hurt some plants, yes, like a peace lily. You would not want to put this in a really bright, say, west window. A lot of plants, this would be another one, the Chinese evergreen. There would be potential for them to burn. They're going to be much more susceptible to insect problems. Whereas under proper conditions and properly watered and fertilized, it's going to be rare that you're going to have any, insect problems. The same with your outdoor plants. But if you put them in a location they don't like, just as in the yard, that's when you're going to be more likely to have problems. Maranta, yes, it's actually spelled wrong on the list, which I noticed this morning. It is, yes, it's actually Maranta. I believe it's under moderate.
It is.
Yes, yeah, right there, but the H should not be in there.
And it's more of a low light than a medium light?
No, low to moderate. I have used this under low light conditions and I've done real successfully with it.
So how are you defining low light?
Low light is, I'm sure there is a technical way to describe it, an area that really gets very little natural light is how I would describe it. Yes, ma'am.
Ceiling fans.
Ceiling fans can be an issue for certain plants. Not everybody wants to have wind on them constantly. As I'm sure you all know, orchids and other things can drop blooms very, very quickly if they have ceiling fans on over them. They can tend to kind of dry things out a little more quickly. So if it is an area you leave ceiling fans on continually, I would maybe not have the plant directly under it.
Say, for example, the Chinese evergreen. It's not directly under it. It's off to the side.
That shouldn't be a problem. I wouldn't think. I mean, are you saying like from me to you away from it? That's a little close, but again, I would just think it would maybe dry the plant out a little more quickly.
I have a question about light coming into the house. We have glass that it's a double pane window.
Okay.
And it doesn't look like it has color to it,
Right.
but it does. Does that make a difference?
It can a bit, yes, because those things will filter out certain parts of the spectrum. Yes, so that will kind of diminish the amount of light the plant's really getting.
So you have to switch them out.
Yeah, and keep an eye on the plants. I mean, if they look like they're suffering, then yes, I would definitely consider rotating two different ones. Okay, let's see, and over here are a couple others you may not be quite as familiar with. This is called a Zamioculcas. Some people call it a ZZ plant. Very architectural look to these. I love them. They just are so unique. They'll get, pretty tall. We have a really nice specimen in the greenhouse. It's probably about this tall and I think about a 14 pot. It's another one that can take lower light. It can also take bright light as well. So this is a, pardon me? Maybe just say ZZ plant. ZZ plant. Yeah, Zamioculcas is what it is. Zamioculcas. Oh, is it? Okay. Very good.
Under moderate light?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. So this would be another one to try under lower to moderate light areas. And then this is a, are y'all familiar with dracaenas, the different dracaenas? I have a couple different ones in here, I think. This is a Dracaena Janet Craig compacta. This is another one. This plant is truly tough as nails. You can put it in an area that gets very little, if almost no light, and it will just hang in there indefinitely. That's pretty funny. I have actually had one in an area that gets no natural light. I forgot to water it occasionally. I water it, and every once in a while it'll drop a yellow leaf, but other than that, it just sits there almost like it's an artificial plant. Pardon me? It depends. They don't grow a lot, which is another thing that we'll get into in a second. We do get specimens of these that are about this tall. They grow very, very slowly, and generally as they mature, they do take the leaves off the trunk, so it'll be like something like this. It'll be nowhere near that thick. Generally, they're about 1 inch in diameter, maybe 1.25 inches in diameter. But they just, like I say, tough as nails. This particular Dracaena does not need a lot of water. obviously. I've proven that. Let's see here. And then, of course, Chinese evergreens. I only brought one. But this is a plant that they are hybridizing like crazy. In the past, there were basically two varieties. One with a dark leaf with silver marks, and another one with a light leaf with darker marks. They would get kind of stretched out over time. A lot of plants in low light will get stretched because they're just trying to find light any way they can. That's just their natural way to do things. But they have been breeding these and interbreeding them, and they have come with more compact sizes, as well as some that are taller. There's every variation you can imagine of foliage. Some of them are dark with real light stripes. Some of them actually have cream-colored stems, and it is just a very diverse group. There's probably dozens of them at this point. Just, like I say, just always trying to find something new and different.
How long could that plant stay in that size pot?
Okay, we'll just talk a little bit about the care of low-light plants, because that is one of the factors. Some plants have real fibrous root systems. Some have, root systems that are different than that. Low-light plants, number one, they don't grow a lot usually. They're not a plant that's going to put on lots of new growth. Consequently, they don't need as much moisture, they don't need as much food, and they can stay in their pots longer. Some plants like palms, you rarely have to repot, actually. I mean, they can stay in their same grow pot for years, literally for years. You'll know that it's time to repot them when the pot is really, really full, especially on something like this. When you have to water the plant more frequently, it tends to dry out more quickly. Or if, just if you want to change the look. I mean, if it's starting to look too big for the container you had initially put it in. So like I say, the main things are that because they don't get as much light, they don't produce as much food for themselves, and they don't need as much water, they don't need as much food, they don't grow as quickly. So that's kind of those are some general rules of lower light plants. Okay, and as I was going to say earlier, if you do have an area that really does not get a lot of light, if you want to keep a Maranta in there, maybe have two of them. Keep one in an area of your home or office that gets the appropriate amount of light, and the one in the lower light, and then every 2 or 3 just switch them. And that way they will get everything they need to stay healthy looking for quite a long time. I've had a plant like this in this exact same pot for like a year and a half. It has grown, but there's, I have no problems with it at this point, so I would imagine it can go a little longer. Sir?
Can you split these plants?
You can. Sansevierias, of course, can be separated really easily. And if you ever do that, you'll see there are so few roots on one of these. It's really pretty amazing. It takes a very long time for them to get really, really root well. So these you could. Most of the time, I don't recommend that just because the roots that are there are growing together, and anytime you're pulling things apart, you are going to damage them. I would never want to do that to this or this. Chinese evergreens may be an exception. You could possibly separate those a little bit. Anytime you're going to attempt something like that, make sure you use Super Thrive. Is everybody familiar with Super Thrive? No? This is Super Thrive.
Super
Thrive.
Thrive, okay.
Correct. If you have plants inside or outside, you have to have this. I would never try to have plants without this product. I actually buy a big bottle of it. It's basically plant hormones and vitamins. And anytime a plant is stressed for whatever reason, this is the thing of everything available that will help that plant get out of that stress. If the plant has been staying too wet for some reason, spray it on the foliage of the plants, because plants real efficiently absorb nutrients and things through the foliage. So this, anytime you're going to do any transplanting, anytime you're going to do any separating, inside or out, like I say, I highly recommend mixing some of this. And you use basically a capful in a gallon of water. That's it. So, very, very important stuff to have. All right. We're going to move on to plants that can take a little bit brighter light at this point. This, as I had said, was a Dracaena. This is actually another kind of Dracaena. This is a Warnicki, Dracaena Warnicki. There are several different varieties of this. Some of them have kind of medium green with just some cream-colored stripes in them. The Dracaena family, well, most of them grow up and they will have canes, kind of like this yucca here. I'm sure you're familiar with corn plants. And Dracaena marginata, some people I think call it a dragon tree or something like that. But they are very, very versatile and have very many different looks, from real wide leaves to real narrow leaves. Some of the more brightly colored ones do require more light than something like this Janet Craig compacta here. So Dracaena like this could take a moderate light area. Let's see, this is a grape ivy. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this. Yeah, this is a really nice plant. English ivy, I had one someplace, can also be grown inside. To me, it's a little bit prone to spider mite. So if you want the look of an ivy, I would suggest trying the grape ivy instead.
Wendy?
Yes.
Is that what they call oak ivy too?
There are two forms. One is called oak leaf ivy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are they kind of the same?
Yes, very, very similar.
I have two of those, but I haven't paid too much attention to them. So.
Okay. Yeah, they're pretty, you know, the biggest thing I think people do to indoor plants is they keep them too wet. You know, I mean, it's almost better to air slightly to the dry than to keep them too wet. Because don't forget, they don't get the air circulation, you know, and just the change in temperatures and things that outdoor plants get. So you do have to be aware of not keeping them too wet. And we'll talk a little bit more about watering in a minute. But again, oak leaf ivy, if you like the look of an ivy, I almost prefer this over English ivy. If you want to grow English ivy inside under moderate light, I do suggest taking it to the sink periodically and rinsing off the foliage. It's real important to try to keep the foliage of the plants clean, because even though most of us have closed up homes, there is still an awful lot of dust, as those of us that have to dust know. Let's see, another one is, I believe it's listed as Syngonium on there, or this is also arrowhead plant, Nephthyitis. Again, another one that there's a lot of different coloration of foliage. This will be another good one for lower light areas, or excuse me, moderate light areas. Okay, and what else do we have here? This is a type of philodendron right here called a Xanadu philodendron. These can actually also be planted outside, similar to a Siloam or split leaf philodendron. They're going to want shadier areas outside. Inside, they're going to want moderate to bright light. And they're very easy to care for. Really nice full plant, although you can't tell as much here with all of this stuck in here. If you want to try blooming plants, there are certain ones that can be grown under moderate light conditions. Things like the begonias and kalanchos could be put in moderate to bright light. They will last longer under bright diffused light, but generally they're treated as accent plants. It's something that's going to be beautiful for several weeks, and then most people throw them away or give them away. The same with bromeliads, and there is so much variation in bromeliads. This is a Guzmania, and this one is a Neoregelia. And as houseplants, as accent pieces, they are very, very long-lived, anywhere from probably 2 to 6 months for most of them. After that time, they are challenging to get them to rebloom. Most people do discard them. But you get so much beauty and so much impact for such a long time. I mean, you could conceivably buy 2 or 3 of these a year and have just a really nice showpiece in your home. The bromeliads can actually even be put under low light conditions, as if you look through the mall. If you go in the mall, there will be mass plantings of bromeliads. Again, because they use them as temporary things. Under lower light conditions, they may not last quite as long, but they still will be beautiful and very, very showy. Okay, and then we will move on to brighter areas. This is a ficus. I'm sure you all are familiar with ficus. This is actually a variegated form of it. This is a yucca back here. Crotons, right here, the beautiful colorful foliage of a croton. These could also be grown under moderate light, but again, the more light, the more color they're going to have in the leaves. Back here is an Aralia, and Aralias are some of my favorite plants. They're just such a neat group. There's some that have leaves that are round with serration on the edges. This is a real lacy looking Ming Aralia, and they're just such, I don't know why I have such an affinity for them, but I do. It's just something about them. Under bright conditions, this is a Strelitzia. I don't know if it's on the list or not.
Would you spell?
Strelitzia, Strelitzia. Does that look right? Did I throw any extra letters in? But this is actually, I don't know if you've seen the orange and blue bird of paradise. This is related to it. The one that is grown inside supposedly gets a white flower. However, under normal household conditions, I don't think that's going to happen. The yuccas, right here, can also take bright light. To me, bright light would be more like south and west exposures. Some of these could actually even go in windows like that, in a south or west window. Others, like the Aralia, would probably want that light very diffused, but it needs really bright, diffused light. This is a Rex begonia, a little bit more challenging to grow inside. Aralias are a little challenging as well. You know, because of the drier air in homes, some plants can be a little prone to spider mite, and this would be one that may have a little bit of issue with that. But again, properly maintained, that's not nearly as big of a problem. Rex begonias, and I didn't pick a really pretty one, but I'm sure y'all are familiar with these. The coloration on these can be purple and pink and silver and just any combination. They are so unique. They bloom a little bit, but really the big calling card is the foliage. There's even one called an iron cross begonia, which has kind of a light green leaf, kind of real crinkly, and it has a black kind of cross type shape in the center of it. Real unique group. Also something, this is called a spring cactus. And they are something that we've finally been able to get. They will bloom obviously this time of year. Other than that, you're going to treat them very much like a Christmas cactus. Just keep them in real bright diffused light, a little bit toward the dry side, never bone dry, and properly fertilized and all. Each year about this time they should start blooming again. And when they open, I mean, they are just lovely. They are just like way open, so it's a real pretty plant. Some of the succulents, if you're interested in succulents, they can also be grown under brighter conditions. Of course, ponytail palms. And ponytail palms can even be done in moderate light. So there's always a little bit of variation if you're willing to experiment. You know, if something doesn't work, always have a plan B in mind. Jade plants, of course. And a couple others. Good morning. How are you? Coming in. Did you have trouble with the traffic?
No, I didn't.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's an A.
Okay. A couple others I wanted to bring in just because I think they are so much fun. This is obviously called String of Pearls, and this one is called String of Hearts. And again, if you want to try them inside, bright situations would be best for them. Now, somebody I was asking Donna about toxicity of String of Pearls. And we looked it up in the book. A lot of house plants can have some moderate, and I hate to use the word toxicity, I don't know what the real word would be, but they may cause something as simple as stomach upset or something like that if a cat was to ingest them. If you have young children in a home, I would be very cautious about putting plants out anyway, because they are just such wonderful, curious creatures that they've got to check everything out. So if you want house plants, I would put them up high. You know, these, in the book it said some senesos are toxic, some are not. So it's just really a matter of finding resources, whether you have to go online or get a book. If you were to look at this book, almost every single plant in the world is in this book. Every plant that we try to grow as a house plant is in here. Again, it may just be that it just will cause upset stomach. It may be something that will be much more dangerous. So if you have pets or curious cats or anything like that, you really do need to be cautious about bringing plants into the house. I'm sure you all know Dumpcane or Dieffenbachia. That one definitely does have toxicity issues. If it is ingested, it'll cause, I think, swelling of mucous membranes in the mouth, for starters. So it's definitely best to err on the side of caution. Let's see, for fertilizing plants, we use the same things we do outside for the most part. The Has to Grow or the Natural Solutions liquid, which is everybody.
How often?
For house plants, because they don't grow as rapidly usually, about once a month is usually good enough. I don't know that it's really necessary to do them that, much more often than that.
How do you protect for the mites you were talking
The
about?
mites, a couple different things. Certain plants, palms, I didn't really bring palms except this Neanthobella. Palms are really great if you need larger plants. There are Kentia palms and Rapis palms, Areca palms, all of which are wonderful to really add some drama, to really fill up a larger space. They can, again, be a little prone to spider mite under poor care. Like I say, the dry air in a home is just an issue, which is going to, make that situation a little more possible. You can do a couple different things. An occasional, take the plant outside, occasionally spray with seaweed and molasses. Or even take it outside and just kind of hose it off. Of course, being that we have hard water, you have to be careful to not get an accumulation of water spots on them. I used to always hose my palms off and never really had that issue for some reason. But the liquid seaweed and molasses can be beneficial. Also, occasionally, like I said, the foliage needs to be clean. If foliage gets real dusty, the plant can't take moisture in, it can't take nutrients in. The microbes living on the leaves, the beneficial microbes, will suffer. Green Glow is the only thing that I like to use to clean plants. Although plant wash is good, for interior plants I really like this. I actually dilute this product, a little shiny for me, but I usually dilute it 1/3 to 1/2 with water. And it gives just a really nice gloss without looking artificial. They used to sell some in a spray, an aerosol spray. I don't like that stuff. There are propellants and things in there that are not necessary. Never use an aerosol, obviously. But this, like I say, diluted with water especially, it just gives it a clean look without being, artificially shiny.
You just pour it on the leaves, or?
I know you spray it.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, you said something about spray, and I thought maybe that's.
Yeah,
that's
just
different.
no. This would be the thing. Just dilute it with water and spray it on the foliage. The nice thing about this product is you don't even necessarily have to wipe it off. You can just kind of do a nice light coating on the leaves and let it dry, and it won't look spotty. So, which is beneficial, because if you're doing a plant like this, it takes a really long time to clean every leaf. So, let's see here now. As for watering plants, that gets a little more challenging. As I said, the plants under lower light probably won't need watering quite as often. It's really difficult to say, water this plant once a week, because conditions change in a home. Again, the air is so dry in there. The soil doesn't always dry out, when change seasons and things like that. A lot of people do just water their house plants once a week. If you can get them to that system, that's great. I've never really done that, so I just, kind of check everybody a little bit. But under low light, they won't need watering as often. Bright light, they will. What we suggest doing, instead of planting directly in a decorative container of any kind, leave the plant in its grow pot. It's much easier to maintain them that way. And that way you can also use almost anything for a container. If you have nice big old syrup pots, those big cast iron pots, and you have kind of a country look in your home, you can set different plants in there instead of worrying about planting directly in it. If you want to use plants or pots that have a hole in the bottom, all you do is you put the saucer inside the plant, or inside the pot, just like this. Right? So you don't have to worry about the water running out. If the pot's deep like this, you can actually even set something inside of it to kind of stage it up. So you can put that in there and put the plant's saucer in. leave it in the grow pot and just drop that in there. A little bit of moss to disguise, you know, the top of the pot so you don't see that in the soil level. And when it's time to water it, all you have to do is take it out. Take it to the sink and water it, or set it outside if it's a large one. And when it's done draining, you just put it back in there. It's much easier than carting around this heavy pot. Trust me. Especially when you get into large plants.
Question about that.
Yes.
Do you think it makes a difference to a plant if a pot is clay or plastic?
Not really. You know, outside, you know, it's going to possibly dry more quickly, you know, one way or another. But no, I mean, for houseplants set in a decorative container, say use anything you want. Whether it's a basket, I don't have a basket, but whether it's a basket, again, just go by your decor. So really anything goes. Now, the reason we suggest taking them out to the sink to water them is you don't want to let your plant sit in water for extended periods of time. That is a quick way to kill a plant. So that's why we say take it out. If it's a large one like this, take it outside or to the tub, wherever you can. Put your water or fertilizer solution through. I mean, if I was to be watering a plant like this, I would probably take a gallon of water and pour it in there. You know, let the pot fill up, let it drain out, and then go ahead and do it again. If the plant is dried evenly, then it will only absorb as much water as it needs. And everything else is just going to go away. Or drain away. If you have a plant that you know has gotten too dry, sometimes you may need to add a drop or two of dish soap to the water to kind of get this, it acts as a surfactant, whether it's on foliage or wherever. But if you need, when soil dries, it shrinks. And it's harder for the plant, for the soil to be re-moistened. So sometimes just adding a drop or two of dish soap can make that easier. So go ahead and do that. If the soil is really dry, I would actually suggest setting it in something and letting it soak it back up. Okay. Another thing about plants that are really dry, if a plant is really dry and stressed, don't fertilize it at that point. If you want to use something like Super Thrive, that's not a problem because it is not a complete fertilizer. But if your plant is really dry, do not feed it. It is like us, if we're not well, we don't want to sit and have a meal. It's the last thing on your mind. So wait until the soil has been moistened and then water or fertilize it the next time you water it. Okay. Let's see here. One thing I did not talk about yet was orchids, and I know that y'all, probably some of you attended the orchid seminar. They are another one that really are very easy to grow if they're kept away from ceiling fans and they're not kept too wet. It's kind of an anticipation factor because normally they bloom about once a year. So just keep it beautiful, keep it well maintained. After it stops blooming, maybe put it somewhere less conspicuous. And then, you know, later on in the year when it starts to bloom again, go ahead and place it back where you want to display it.
Do you cut it back? I just lost my last bloom on mine.
Okay, I generally suggest that let this old spike brown down naturally. Some people cut them right where the first bloom had come out. So on this one, if the blooms, as they all fall off, you may want to cut it right above where the first one came out. Sometimes they'll produce a side spike off of that, or side branch. You know, to me, I just usually let them kind of brown down naturally. If they don't, then later on, I would probably cut it there. But again, you know, once the blooms are gone, it's just kind of a modest little plant. So you may want to, I keep mine outside almost all the time unless it's going to be really cold. And then as they bloom, I bring them back in the house. Yes, ma'am?
Sometimes they will produce another plant on that.
Yes, yes, and that's called a kiki, and they can be left on the plant, and then after the roots have gotten to be, you know, 1.5 inches or 2 inches long, then you can remove them and put them in a potting medium. Yeah, not all of them do that. I haven't noticed it as much as on some of the modern hybrids, but some of the more old-fashioned ones are the ones that I've gotten kikis off of before. So, yes, ma'am.
Xanadu,
philodendron.
Uh-huh.
I have one that I've had for years in a pot and set outside in the bed, and it grew out of the pot and into the ground.
Yes.
It's too big and almost froze and all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
My question
Sounds like
is-
success.
Now, it's got to be moved and gotten out of that pot somehow. And that's gonna do lots of damage to lots of roots. Will the bottom, can it be cut off? Can the top be rooted at all? Will the bottom sprout out at all? Or is it finished?
The bottom would sprout out if you were to cut it off. As to how to start reroot the top part, I'm not quite sure about that. I would think you'd not want to have all that plant material. I think that would not work. If you were to try it, I would say you'd probably want to get just the growing end of it.
Yeah, I think I'll try it because it's gotten so much space
Uh-huh.
that I just wondered about whether I'll try.
Yeah, let me know. Like I say, I think that you'd really want just the end of it because there's no way without some good roots that it would be able to survive with all of that foliage.
And what about the dracaenas, the ones that grow tall and spindly? Will those tops?
Yes, if you cut a dracena, and the same on a yucca, if you cut this plant, it will produce side shoots from just below where it is cut. So yeah, you can't do that.
The goldfish plant, like the little tiny
Yeah,
one.
Nematanthus, uh-huh.
Yes. I've never succeeded when it gets too sprawly to rooting the tips. Can they be rooted and lose a good time?
I'm not sure of that either. I would imagine that they could be. I don't know that that's when you'd have to separate. I would think you would probably want to take the cuttings and maybe start them in sand or perlite or something.
I've never succeeded. I just wondered whether-
Well, I would think being such a tropical plant, it may be another one that really needs to be kept very, very warm and in very, very bright diffuse light when you're doing it. Yeah, so have you tried it that way as well?
I don't know. I've done it off and on. I'm thinking it's cutting back. It needs it now, but I was thinking also to wait until later on, like June or something.
Right, when the days are longer and things like that, that maybe make a difference. The interesting thing of plant is we actually had one inside the store under pretty low light conditions, and it lasted there for quite a long time. It didn't really bloom. It did start to get a bit stretched, which again plants will do if they're not in enough light, but I was very impressed. It didn't really lose leaves. It didn't discolor, and we had it there for probably a couple months. So I was, again, a little bit of experimentation, you never know. Let's see here. Can be an issue. But again, it's just a matter, you know, like plants outside, the better care you take of them, the less likely it is to be a problem. If you do come up with spider mite issues or mealybug, is everyone familiar with mealybug? Mealybug? It is one of the most, that and scale, they're both scales actually, are very difficult to get rid of. There's a product called neem oil. The ready to spray we get is called Rose Defense, and I know they're probably familiar with this. This does have to coat the insects though, so you do have to be real meticulous. Just take your time, have a cup of tea or a glass of wine before you get started on a big plant, and just spray. Never spray when the plant is in strong light, of course, but this is pretty much the best thing for, as far as I'm concerned, for scale or mealybug infestations. If an infestation like that gets away from you, if you don't notice that, you know, it's been there and all of a sudden you realize it's everywhere on the plant, quite honestly, I usually suggest getting rid of the plant because it is just too difficult to get it under control. Because the young stage will be down low on the plant, you may not see it, you'll get rid of it, the scale will flake off over time, you'll think everything's okay, and then all of a sudden it's back. So if a plant does get a major infestation, I do think that sometimes you do just have to let it go. Yes?
One of the gentlemen here told me one time to use a half and half alcohol and water, which I sprayed on, and then in some cases hand wipe.
Right.
And that kept them off for a long time.
Did it? Yes. Yeah, and alcohol, that is what everybody used to use, was alcohol and water. Yep, and it still works.
Yeah.
You know, so if you want to go that route, that's great. If you just want to grab something, the neem oil. I wouldn't even try the Safer's soap. Safer's, if you get a few aphids on something, which aren't as common inside, spider mite, you know, you could try the Safer's on that. And let's see, again, just the regular fertilizing. you know, with these products. Also, if you do the moss on a pot like this, I don't suggest putting lots of it. I just like to pull it and just really give just enough to disguise the surface of the soil and the edges of the pot. If you get a whole lot, I just don't think there's enough air exchange with the soil. It can stay a little wet too long. So just enough to kind of disguise that, the soil. And, yes.
Can you talk about African violets?
Yes, African violets are actually, with the proper amount of light, very easy to grow inside. And this is another one. There is so much variation from little minis that have leaves that are the size of this petal and still will produce a fair-sized flower or spikes of flowers, and into these, and every color of bloom, variegated foliage. They don't have to be kept under particular lights. They don't have to be kept in orchid pots. The big thing with these, a couple things, someone was asking about the kind of container. Actually, they don't want to be in terracotta. If the leaves are resting on something like a real porous terracotta pot, they will rot off where they're touching that. They used to make these little collars that you would put under the leaves to keep it off of the edge of a terracotta pot. I don't know if they still do. They can bloom on and off all year long. At least an east or a southeast window would be the amount of light I'd want to put it in to get it to continue blooming. And when you water, try to keep the water off of the foliage, just water, and that's true with a lot of plants as just general maintenance. Try to keep the water off the foliage if you can. Again, just, you know, for water spotting and things like that. But just water the surface of the soil. I always go by weight when I'm watering house plants. You know, if the plant feels a little lighter, it's time to water it. Once you do water it, you want it to definitely feel heavier. And if you do that, you'll know that the whole root ball is thoroughly moistened. And when it's thoroughly and really moistened like that, it's going to dry down more evenly, so you're not going to get pockets of dry in there. If you like to say, if it's dry and you pour water in there, most of it's going to rush out. The inside of the soil ball is not going to be moistened. So you want the plant to feel heavier than it did when you started. I would generally say, depending on the size of the container, if it's thoroughly watered in the beginning, you can let it dry down anywhere from a 1/4 inch to 2 inches, depending on the size of the pot. Something like a Chinese evergreen of this size, properly watered in the beginning, I would say you could let it dry down probably about 1.5 inches before you need to water it again, and then just water it very thoroughly. Again, I'm sorry I got off of that. I was thinking of that as I was feeling this plant. But yeah, African violets really should not be that difficult to grow inside. They don't have to have special lights or the special pots.
You mentioned several times that some of these plants you can put outside.
Mm-hmm.
Can you put all of these plants outside all year long?
No.
At San Antonio temperature?
You cannot. Some plants are really cold sensitive where they may suffer damage even in the low 50s or upper 40s. Chinese evergreens do not want to be cold. Yeah, they really can't be. Peace lilies, these guys I would say probably 52, 50 degrees at the lowest, and then they really are gonna, they'll kind of wilt, they won't, if a plant gets too cold, it just won't recover properly either, if it's for an extended period of time. Chinese evergreens don't want to be too cold. Usually healthy peace lily, I would say upper 40s. I do have one that I've left outside. It's been in a 4-inch pot for a couple of years, and it's kind of tucked back behind some things. And I think I brought it in one time this winter, but I have a balcony, so it's rather protected. And it looks okay. It needs a new pot desperately. But let's see, Raelians are another one that you really have to be careful. Like Chinese evergreens, I would say 50-ish. You know, not any lower than that for sure. Dracaenas are another one, like these guys, and the corn plants and things like that are also real cold sensitive. Something kind of interesting about plants, plant leaves do burn just like skin burns. And how you can tell is if you go to a plant and you think it's getting too much light for whatever reason, you've noticed something doesn't seem right with it. If you feel the leaf, it will be very, very hot to the touch. And I mean, unusually hot. And you will know that that plant is undoubtedly going to suffer some burn on it. Speaking of burning, if you have a plant sitting in sun that you want to clean up, it needs to be moved out of the sun before you do anything really on the foliage. But even something as mild as green glow, do not put it on the plant when the plant is in the sun. All right, let's see, even, you know, a lot of these plants like these begonias and kalanchos, which I'm sure y'all are familiar with, they will also can sometimes be, you can get them to rebloom, but it does take a pretty good while. Kalanchos will rebloom, they're short day bloomers, so generally January into February. No matter what you do the rest of the year, they're not going to bloom for you in the summer most of the time. Although they're hybridizing those as well. So you may have some out there that can be gotten to rebloom in the summertime. Okay. Did want to just mention a couple books real quick, as well as the plant, what is called a plant nanny. I'm sure you've seen these kind of gifts, and they are a glass ball on a tube, and you can stick this down. You can fill the glass ball with water and stick it down in the plant, and the soil will draw moisture out as it's needed. See, this one comes with a little terracotta piece that you would actually stick in there. So you stick this down in the plant, you fill this with water and set it on there, and as the plant needs moisture, it will draw it through the terracotta. They're decorative as well as being practical, especially if you're going to have to be away for a while. This one I don't know that would properly water a plant for an extended period of time, but for a short period of time, something like that could work. And then, of course, books. This is a pretty good one. There are probably newer ones out, and anytime these days we have a question about toxicity of a plant, we actually do go online and look it up. It's just so quick and easy to do, and there's always new research being done. So if you want a book, Plants That Poison is a pretty good one. And as for general maintenance of plants, this book is great. It'll be good for a few laughs as well. In other parts of the country where they don't have such a temperate climate, or other parts of the world, they will grow everything inside. They will grow plumbago, they will grow aspidistra, they'll grow different palms, they'll grow impatiens and vincas, and just all different kinds of things, alamandas, agapanthus. So, of course, you'll have to have real specific conditions if you want to try that, or a specific situation. But it is a good book because it shows different kinds of damage that can occur to a plant and what to do about it, the secrets of success, proper temperature, light, humidity, propagation, like under, what are those called, Norfolk Island pines. The propagation is difficult. It's best to buy new plants. So if you're interested in propagation, there is a little bit of info in this book that can help you with that. And then again, this is just such a fabulous book written by Dr. Wolverton. And this is a lot of the NASA research that was done. It shows you a picture of the building that they set up to test the plants and their ability to draw different toxins out of the air. It has a really nice two-page spread, including a photo, obviously, of each of the different plants that are best at removing toxins from the air. And the nice thing is that most of those plants are plants that we can very easily grow as houseplants. The bit of info that I read in here, and I've been involved with houseplants for many years, but plants adapt so differently to their surroundings. And their just natural ability to do things. An areca palm is a really good palm, large palm for bright areas. In here it says, this plant has unique ability to remove salt accumulation to a selected frond. It says branches. When saturated, these branches die and should quickly be removed. So, if you will sometimes see a plant that develops a yellow leaf for some reason, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong. The plants will, because our water is so hard here, sometimes you'll get brown tips. It's just the water. It can also be the low humidity inside. If an older leaf dies occasionally, it's nothing to worry about. Some plants like arecas will just do that naturally. They'll take from the whole plant, they will just concentrate all of the bad stuff that they're getting from the air and the water in one frond, and then you just remove that. I thought that was pretty fascinating. Yes?
Does adding apple vinegar to the water help anything?
I've not ever done that. I've not really heard about that. It is such a beneficial thing to use. I think if you were to occasionally do that, it shouldn't be a big problem.
I can't remember now what.
Well, I know that people use it outside. I mean, some people say to help acidify things. I don't know that that's as big of a deal with most house plants, but I don't think there'd be anything wrong with it. I'm sure Bob could tell you why to do it. And I'll ask him afterwards, actually, because I don't know. Another quick thing about watering, if you have a salt-based water softener, you cannot use that water on your houseplants. Salt is very, very bad for the roots of plants, and it'll accumulate and it'll cause the plant to die. If you have a potassium-based water softener, it's all right to use that.
But can I use the filtered water in the sink?
Yes.
I mean, my guy who installed it told me to use that water.
Yes, that would.
What I drink.
Correct. Yeah, that's not going to be a problem because your filter should be removing that sodium. Yes. Okay.
If it's not, your houseplant will tell you.
This is true. Exactly.
When you get a water softener system, does that include the water that comes out of the hose too?
No, generally they're just piped inside.
Inside.
Yeah, so yes, you would have to go outside and take water from an outside there.
Ask. Because I have only one hydrant in our whole house.
Really?
It's not softened.
Really? Huh.
They installed 2 new outside taps for me when I had them already.
Uh-huh.
You know, under.
No kidding.
Yeah, so I think they do that now.
Okay, well that's good to know. So yeah, I guess that would be the thing to take away
So
from
I
that
had,
is.
2 taps here and 2 taps there and 2 taps.
Oh my gosh, wow, I did not know that they would do that. One final thing about humidity. Generally, we don't recommend growing most ferns inside because the dry air really can be a problem for them. If you want to attempt it, I would suggest getting a tray and putting pebbles and water on it, and then just setting the decorative container on that tray. That water constantly evaporating will provide enough humidity. Sometimes it does work. So if you want to try something a little more challenging, don't limit yourself. Just try and see what happens. But have a plan B too.
There isn't much humidity outside anyway.
Not these couple days. Well, most of the year there's a lot, people say, but this time of year on a day like today, it's a little bit low to moderate. So, okay. Well, does anyone have any other questions?
I don't have a question, but do y'all know that there's a bird making a nest in that plant right there?
I kept seeing it fly by.
And I think it's a red bird.
Is it? Yeah, I heard. Yeah. So, well, we will not
So can
do
y'all
anything.
leave that down until they're finished?
Oh, we definitely will. We have in the cactus house, there is a wren nesting in a begonia, and we have it tagged that it's not for sale, do not disturb. So we try to be, we'll sacrifice plants to birds. Oh, did we? Oh, yes, that's her. Yep. How wonderful.
I think
Yeah, it
it's a red
is.
bird.
Yeah.
Cardinal.
I actually have finches nesting in a fuchsia on my balcony right now. They come every spring.
They love hanging back.
Yes, they do. So, and they're obviously used to me. You know, I mean, I put water out for them and everything. But yeah, no, we'll put not for sale on that
Do
one.
they call you when it's time to feed them in the morning?
I don't feed them. They seem to be doing pretty well on their own. You know, I've thought of putting things out there, but my space is fairly limited. So.
They work so hard when they've got babies.
Yes, they do. Aren't they something? Oh, it's fascinating. I haven't seen them lately. Roberta sometimes, this time of year, may even have some of the blackback lesser goldfinches still. So check with her. Okay, guys. Any other questions?
Thank you very
Well, thank